I would like to, for this part, introduce the founder of Project Zanab, Sister Ruhi Rizvi, who is also a specialist community public health nursing practitioner and also has ample experience in working with young children and families. If I could get Sister Ruhi to come to the podium. Thank you very much. Aloud salawat. Thank you.
Essentially, it's important for me to address how Project Zanab was inspired. And Project Zanab was actually inspired by Lady Zanab, Salaam Alaiha. Allow salawat in the name of Lady Zanab, Salaam Alaiha. The very essence of reaching out to support communities by addressing social issues which impact the wider community and the families was the reason behind Project Zanab's inception. Project Zanab initially was thought of because of the outcry from the young children or young persons that I was hearing in my ears daily during my course of work, where we heard issues from honor violence, forced marriages, and anything from domestic violence to all other issues which impact them. Some of them where children are so distressed that they take up self-harming, where they decide they want to use any form of expression to reduce emotional distress. Self-harming is one of them, and it's very sad to see that some parents have no idea of the wider implications of self-harming in children and youth, which young people use as way of distracting themselves or ways of what they think is the way to heal some of the issues that are brought upon them. Project Zanab learned that some social issues, for example, forced marriages, was coming about because where parents do not have the understanding that their youth being brought up in the Western society needs some change or form of change and needs communication with their parents and other peers, finds themselves in a position where they are forced into a marriage, and this marriage is because that is the only solution that parents seem to find. Those forced marriages often lead to domestic violence, and today my topic is to discuss tackling domestic abuse. Domestic abuse, having the understanding of what domestic violence is, that it's an incident of patterns of incidents of controlling, coercive and threatening behavior of violence and abuse of those aged 16 years or over, and or have been with intimate or family members regardless of gender and sexuality. This can encompass, but is not limited in the following types of abuse: physical, psychological, sexual, financial, and emotional. Some of these abuses are carried out without the underpinning knowledge of what actually is abuse, and mostly it's misunderstood from culture to culture. And why does that occur? Because some cultures do not recognize maltreatment in the home as a form of abuse. It's essential that our voices reach out through a series of lectures and Islamic means to informing everyone that abuse is prohibited in Islam. Some women are mistreated and abused by accepting as they consider this as a normal behavior, perhaps through their experiences of their own parents. What Project Zanab stands for is that we won't stand for maltreatment. Project Zanab would not stand for abuse. Abuse victims or survivors, as they are well known, are not just women. Men are also victims or survivors, although the reported rate is often less in number, which could be due to a number of reasons. Physical harm or abuse is a painful chastisement to any part of the body, leaving regions of the body in pain for example, with cuts, bruises. But the wider implications of such abuses is the psychological abuse, which comes from years of taunting, tormenting behavior, and most perhaps from provocation. Finance is also seen as an abuse because women or men are withdrawn from finances, and there's a controlling behavior in which it's led that women or men can be dependent on finances from other parties. Some of these parties means that they are holding out for expenses, and some of the smallest expenses are not given to them when it is essential for use. Emotional abuse, this can be a direct and indirect effect of abuse and causes a long-term suffering. The implications of this are through children and what they manifest within themselves through learning behavior of what they see or visualize in their own homes. An abused woman lives in fear, unable to predict when the next attack will come. She may become isolated from friends and family and increasingly dependent on her abuser. And it's in these are very sad circumstances. It can be very hard to make sense of what is really happening. We, in our cultures, decide that that is something that is private to our own selves, and we seldom disclose it to one another. Sometimes we gain back information which tries to support us, but we don't have the understanding that some of those talks that we have with our colleagues, our friends, or family members can resolve our issues. Sometimes we are so isolated with the pain of domestic violence that we feel that we don't want to discuss that with anyone, and we isolate ourselves, causing ourselves more emotional distress and hoping that the problem will go away. Over time, a female self-esteem may be worn down. She may start believing her abuser's insults. She may blame herself of the abuse. Similarly, children will manifest those issues too, where they feel that the abuse that is going on is something private to themselves, and they may not want to disclose that. However, in my work, I see children who discuss the problems, and they will feel that because we have a health professional demeanor, that they may want to come up to us and discuss that and disclose information about their household. One young person only last week disclosed to myself that she was being heavily beaten by her father and that she didn't want to discuss it with anyone else because she felt threats. And her father has now neglected her needs. Her school clubs and everything else from her has been withdrawn because she disclosed that information to us. That shouldn't be the case with domestic abuse. In fact, this domestic abuse needs a solution. Nobody should be undergoing trauma or torment. Some women may ignore or choose to ignore that they have domestic violence issues because they hope that her partner or the man she loves will change. This seldom happens, and it means that the family needs support. There needs to be guidelines and practice in place where men can actually seek anger management problems to be resolved for them. There are parallels between the impact of torture and imprisonment on hostages and the impact of domestic violence. Abused women can develop post-traumatic stress, which includes a range of symptoms: agitation and anxiety, depression, panic attacks, trouble sleeping or relaxing, numbness, sense of isolation, and nightmares. A study of the use of health services by domestic violence survivors have found that 18% see a doctor in the first year of abuse. Although she may feel that this is private to her again, and she may not disclose, the figures that I'm about to give on this topic today do not reflect the reality. Some women feel that they do not want to discuss their private problems, and that behind those closed doors, it is their problem and their problem alone. However, we have found that the wider implications on the children are traumatic, and when one child discloses to you, we know that if that is just one child that's disclosing their problems, that there must be another million somewhere who are also harboring those problems and may take it into their older age. 56% after the second year of a woman suffering abuse is the figures that we have today, and 31% have no contact until the third year. There is support out there, and inshallah, we endeavour to give the correct messages and direction for services to be accessed by people who suffer from domestic abuse. Abused women are not weak, submissive victims. It takes a huge strength to live with an abusive partner, and women have to be strong and resourceful, adopting all kinds of coping strategies to survive each day. Men are abused too. Let us not forget that with every domestic household, there are also men that are also undergoing some of the same abuse. Depending on which one, it could also be emotional, psychological, it could also be something that puts them down, which they feel they do not want to share. Although most domestic violence is directed at women, but men are abused today. Seeking help as an abused man can be very, very hard. You may feel that there's nowhere to turn or that no one will take you seriously. Perhaps you're ashamed about what is happening to you. And we know several men who have displayed anxiety and stress disorders because of the way they are treated within their households. Islam would like for us to treat our husbands and our wives in a manner which were adopted by the Ahlul Bayt alayhi salam. A correct manner, which is why Project Zanab also works towards relationships and helps to resolve issues and mediate between partners. No one deserves to be abused by the person they love. You have the right to be respected and live in a safe environment. Remembering this will help. You are not alone, and many men experience abuse. The abuse isn't your fault, which is a message to my brothers and my sisters and the young children. There are professionals and organizations that can help you. This is something that you mustn't suffer in silence. You can't change your partner's behavior somewhat, but there are so many methods of support that you can gain. Domestic violence is against the law. UK is doing all it can to try and support the victims or survivors of domestic violence. First and foremost, our ladies, in the respect of rights, need to learn about their Islamic rights as women. And this can come through the very beginning instance before they take up marriage. You have the same rights as women. My message to men: the police will take you seriously and arrest your abuser if there is evidence of assault. He or she can be prosecuted. Other statutory services must also provide support regardless of gender. Accepting that you are being abused is an important step, and the next step is to break your silence and isolation by contacting an appropriate organization or speaking to someone you trust. Your questions: but who can I talk to? Well, you are not alone. For support, men can call the Men's Advice Line on 0808 801 0327, and the number should be up on the screen. Or visit the Men's Advice Line. Women can approach support through Women's Aid. There's another organization working for Asian women called Solace Aid. And all you have to do is just Google that name, and inshallah you will gain support. And as I was speaking about the wider implications of domestic violence in any household, children can be on the brunt of that and harbor and manifest issues which very rarely come to the forefront and which will impact them in later life. Children in families experience domestic violence are more likely than other children to exhibit aggressive and antisocial behavior or to be depressed and anxious. This has been found by research by Brown and Bostek, 2003. Another important factor is the long-term problems, and research indicates that males exposed to domestic violence as children are more likely to engage in domestic violence as adults. Similarly, females are more likely to be victims. This is a cycle which we need to break by educating our children now and maybe change for the future generations. And instead of exposing them to domestic violence, inshallah, support them and bring about a healthier generation. Thank you.